We're going to be talking about mixed methods and user research. I want to introduce who's going to be speaking, though, beforehand, and we'll go to the next slide. And these things are really, really tiny for me to read here. So, but she is an author, published author. So this is Jess Campbell. She's PhD, experienced usability researcher. This is a lot, right? Like you really are like accomplished. She's an amazing. It's amazing that you took your time to come out here. Also, I know Jess from Run Club. So we have met at running. She's done an event with my daughter too, which was pretty cool. Yeah. 1010 Run Club on Tuesdays, right next door. But also we met at Ivanhoe Run Club right down the street. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of cool run clubs around here. So also she holds a PhD in text and technology and a master's degree in English. Let me see. I'm sorry I'm having to read these, but I did want to include all of this stuff in the slides and it'll be in the recording too. As a professor of English, she teaches courses on technical communication and UX while conducting research at the intersection of TC, human-computer interaction, which is HCI, and a lot of that's the craft of what we all do, and UX, focusing on usability and health information systems. And on the right, it just talks about how she does practice UX as well. So she lives and walks what she talks here tonight, and it's really cool to have her. I've got another slide here that you might want to see. She's also a badass athlete. It's like, so she really is awesome. I was gonna tempted to put some pictures of you doing headstands and all those kind of things. She's like Ninja Warrior level. So if you ever want to talk to her about athletics, she could do that too. So with that, we'll let Jessica get started on her talk, and we'll have an opportunity for questions along the way too. Thanks, Jess.
Is this on? Okay. So now I share. Okay. Now if I put it in slideshow.
I think it's trying. He's gonna flip the screen here for us. So you're in a good spot.
Okay. Oh, I can see myself. Okay, cool.
Is that okay?
Yep. Okay.
Is it gonna be in your way? Because we can.
I think it'll be okay. Got it. All right. Here we go. All right. So Wes, thank you so much for that introduction. I didn't expect the pictures. But just a little bit about me, he already kind of described me. So I'm a user experience practitioner. So right now I work at Optum. I'm on the consumer experience. I started out in UX research. And so I kind of, like you said, live, eat and breathe UX every single day. And I love it. I am a technical communication academic. So I do also adjunct at UCF, University of Central Florida. I got my master's from UCF as well as my PhD. So I love UCF. And then I also do research on the side. So I'm a part of a building digital literacy group of academics, and we kind of talk about digital literacy and pedagogy. But then I also have other collaborations where I just continue to do UX research. So I want to tie this back to my goal tonight is just to kind of get you thinking about mixed methods, but I'm going to tie it back to user-centered design. So I'm a big advocate of user-centered or user-centric design frameworks. You can make an argument that user-centered design and design thinking and like double diamond, I'm sure you've heard of those, that they are all different. I think they're very similar because they all kind of start out with the same processes where you are learning about the users, you're doing kind of your discovery research, you're empathizing. I mean, that's the first step in design thinking. And then you go on to do prototyping and testing and then implement. And so I find them to be very similar, and that's why I kind of group them together. Sorry about that. Okay. I got it. How to mix. Okay. So what is mixed methods research? So mixed methods research combines qualitative and quantitative approaches or methods to create a richer, more holistic understanding of the problem. So it's basically using at least a qualitative and at least a quantitative method within like the realm of one study, or when you are, doing the process of like user-centered design. There are different types. Doesn't really matter if you know of these, but parallel design is maybe something that you are already doing and you don't even know if you're doing it, but it's when you're collecting both data types at the same time. So you might be doing interviews and surveys, but then you're analyzing the data separately, and then you kind of bring it back together and you're end up like findings and your recommendations. Sequential design is where you are performing one method first, and that is informing the second method that you follow up with. So you might be doing interviews, and you might pull out a lot of pain points or something like that. And then you want to send out a survey to find out more about those pain points or find out how big of a problem. So the one method is collecting data to inform the second method. And then embedded design is probably used more in the academic world, or if you're actually doing scholarly research. It's when you're collecting both data types within the kind of the same study at the same time, and you're analyzing the data together. So if you're collecting like a lot of different pain points from like a survey, then you have interviews that you have some like verbal report or like quotes that help you explain the data that you found in the surveys. So why does this matter in UX? Number one, humans are super complex. Like, I don't know about you, but we are biopsychosocial, animals, and our psychology affects our behavior, and then our social influences. And so like that all affects your interaction with like different things in your environment. And so having different methods in order to like paint that big picture of like the experience that you're trying to study is helpful. And then qualitative and quantitative, they kind of go together. So the qualitative is really telling you the why, the user's motivations, their emotions, their feelings behind what they're doing. And you can only get that by collecting that directly from the user. And then the quantitative kind of shows you like how big of a problem this is, or like how it helps you prioritize as well. So that's why they're tied together. It gives you those different data sets. And that leads to the next one there. You get a large, rich data corpus. And so to me, I like love data. I think I was telling you over there, I forget your name, but that I love data. Like I want all the data that I can get. So it just gives you different data sets that you can, look into to really paint that picture. It offers methodological pluralism and diversity, and what that refers to is just like humans are very complex. Like no one method is going to paint that big picture of the experience or give you that holistic understanding. So being able to use different methods will do that for you, and also like this, there's lots of strengths and limitations of any single method alone. So being able to use different ones will help you be able to understand what you're studying. And method flexibility refers to the idea that you're not an expert probably in every single method. So it allows you to kind of like pick and choose what maybe, first of all, it's going to help you answer your research question or what you really want to know, but also given your constraints, given your feasibility, it allows you that ability to kind of choose different methods. And triangulation is probably the biggest value that I see, and that just basically refers to like, if you have different data sets, it allows you to kind of like corroborate your findings from one, and like you're saying like, okay, you can compare and contrast, or maybe it's contradictory, and then that means that you might need to go deeper, right? So you go back to the start of your design thinking process. And then also it appeals to various stakeholders. So I don't know about you, but if you're in a company and it's making your, leadership makes decisions based on numbers, right? Like there's no amount of qualitative data I could tell anyone that is going to have a decision made. But if I can support that with numbers, that is helpful. But then it also appeals to the people that are maybe designing products and they want to really know the what and the why and the user pain points. And that qualitative feedback is also valuable for them. So you might have seen, if anyone follows Nielsen Norman group, I'm sure you've probably come across their page. They have a really good they have a good image of like when to use what method, and this is not as good as theirs, but it kind of just shows you that in the beginning of the design process, when you are doing more discovery research, sometimes called generative or formative user research, you're really probably using more qualitative studies or methods. And then towards the end, when you might be doing usability testing, you might be sending out surveys to find out, how many people might adopt this or things like that. That's when you're doing more your summative, and that's primarily qualitative. You can also provide benchmarks. So like you can, before you release something, you test it. And then those are like the markers for like, how well is this product doing? So what is the adoption? How many usability problems did we, diminish before we released it? And so this is tied to user-centered design is because, just like I said, in the beginning, you're probably using more qualitative insights and methods in order to generate those action steps and how to like solutionize and ideate and build a product and what goes into that product. And then at the end, now you've done your prototyping and your testing, and you can leverage those quantitative methods in order to, prioritize the opportunities and then validate that you are actually just finding something that the users are going to adopt. So the next couple of slides, I just kind of go through these methods in a little bit more detail. So qualitative methods usually that you can implement in the beginning are field studies and naturalistic observation. That's where you actually go into the field, you go into the wild, and you observe your users in their natural habitat, and you just kind of collect different data, right? You collect field notes, you can, sometimes if you're doing contextual inquiry, you can actually talk to them and get verbal report data. You might be recording, so you're watching them, as they interact. And then interviews and focus groups. So interviews are, very highly used in UX, but they're usually just with a single person. And you're just asking them questions. They can be structured or semi-structured depending how you want that, how deep you want to go, right? And then focus groups are kind of like interviews with just, more people, right? Like five people. Surveys they can be qualitative. They are a bear to try to analyze data from surveys that are going to be very long if you're collecting qualitative data, but they can be a way of collecting, free response data if you ask questions. In the diary studies, those are where they have tools now for this, but in the old days, right, you would ask users to, mark down in a diary how many times they interacted with something during the day and what were the thoughts and feelings and stuff like that, like 3 times a day. And so basically diary studies are just like that, kind of more of a long-term study that you want to find out about a user's maybe daily habits. Maybe you want to find out how much they interact with one of your products, right? Like an app, if you're building an app. So that would be a diary study. Other qualitative methods are workshops. I love workshops because a lot of times they're very good to getting everyone in the room. I say throw everyone in a room and let's just like hash it out. Give me all your feedback, and then we'll go back and we'll like analyze it and find out some themes. And then concept testing is where even before you have anything designed, like this is actually very valuable. If you just have a concept, you just have an idea, maybe you have some rough sketches of like maybe an experience or a process, or maybe even like a rough design, and you can just throw that out to different, subject matter experts or maybe some of your stakeholders or even users and say, is this even worth like moving forward with? And then design critiques are very similar, but now you have more of a prototype. So now you might have more of a direction and you're just running through these designs with people. In the market research, like you probably all do this on your own if you're in different companies and people are like, what are other people doing, right? What are the other competitors doing? I think not only you should focus on your competitors, but focus on people that maybe not your competitors, maybe in a different domain, but they're doing like a similar technology. Like I'm in healthcare, but a lot of our things are like digital, right? So we need to be looking at the people who do digital right. That's Google, that's Amazon, some other people, like some other companies you can think about. Oops, sorry, guys. Okay. So qualitative methods, this is more of a like usability testing, heuristic evaluation, and cognitive walkthrough are both user-based, or I'm sorry, expert-based usability inspection methods. And these are both where you get together with experts. It can be 2 to 3 subject matter experts, and you are walking through that application or that system as a user. So you're kind of simulating that experience, and then you're pointing out different usability problems. And think aloud, I have a star there because it is known as the gold standard of user-based usability method or usability testing. And that's where you have a user and they're walking through the application that you're testing, or it could be a website, it could be in any interface. And you are having them talk aloud as they're interacting. So that's you're collecting their verbal report, and it's supposed to help you understand their cognitive processes as they're interacting. So you're also recording them, and you're finding out, where they're making mistakes or problems, and also finding out the why behind it, right? And then you're now at the end, your quantitative methods are maybe your standardized surveys. Have you heard of the system usability scale? No? Okay, you have a couple. So the system usability scale is a standardized kind of like it's supposed to understand or supposed to evaluate usability, but it is quantitative, and it is known to be standardized so that you can apply it in any domain. And there's a way of scoring it, so you can look more into it if you haven't, if you're not familiar with that. And then retrospective surveys or questionnaires are they are anything that you create on your own that you maybe want to follow up after you do your more qualitative method. So a lot of the mixed methods studies that I find, and that one that I even did myself for my dissertation, was I followed up my qualitative usability testing with a questionnaire. And then of course your surveys, any type of surveys that are more quantitative based, you can include Likert scales, you can include, multiple choice, drop down, any type of those kind of responses are all quantitative. So I have up here just kind of like common pairings. And so, like I'm a researcher, so I love reading literature. And what I mean by that is like I love reading anything that is in my domain. So I look up, studies that have been mixed method studies, or studies right now, everything is about AI. And so these are just common pairings that I found in my research. So a lot of times user interviews might be paired with a workshop, and then operational data. And that's one key, because that is one that I think that maybe you might all have access to if you're in a company and you're like, well, I don't have access to like quantitative data. Usually there's a lot of data in your company. So all of that data can just be paired together. Interviews and surveys. So I kind of talked about that. Like you can perform interviews and find out maybe the insights that you want to inform your survey questions, or either or vice versa. Focus groups and surveys. So that's just kind of like interviews, but now you have a larger group, focus groups. Subject matter expert interviews with call center data and interaction analysis. So this is one that's highly used, that I use in my organization, because we don't have access to users, and that's actually something I'll talk about a little bit later. But we go to the next best proxy for a user, which is usually subject matter experts who know that process or know that more about that experience. And then call center data. So if you're in a large organization, if there's customer service, there's operational metrics that they're collecting. That's things like call reason. What is the most highly reason that consumers call? What's their largest pain point? Maybe call handle time. That's like, how long did this call take to handle? Like how much of a difficulty does the call center people have to get access to the data to help that person? And then interaction analysis, that's more like, your website. Like, so if you have an organization, if there's anyone that a user is logging in to perform tasks, you can see what pages they're reviewing. You can see how long they might be on a page. Operational data or observational data recordings, plus user textual feedback and interaction analytics. That's another one that I use a lot too. So we have different tools that it's called Glassbox. Are you guys familiar with that? I never knew about it until I heard about it in my org, but it actually can record users' interactions. And so you can see where they're clicking, and then it follows up with a survey. So if that user happens to take the survey, they can give like a verbal report. So that's like both qualitative and quantitative data right in the same thing. And then you compare that with interaction analytics. So you go back to the website and you compare that with like the quantitative data from like where are users going again. So it'll help you kind of like synthesize all of those findings and then, understand that user experience more fully. Experimental designs plus focus groups. So what I mean by experimental designs is have you heard of A/B testing? Like if you're gonna change, a website and you want to have different user interfaces and you test those with different groups, like which one do you like better. Experimental designs can also be like scenario based. So I know this is done a lot with like chat and AI and like testing whether users like to know that it's an AI based response or if they rather would not have that disclosed and like which one they prefer. Find out they actually prefer the AI response and they prefer it until they find out that it's an AI response. So that's actually very interesting. And then usability tests plus retrospective questionnaires. That's what I suggested before is you perform your qualitative usability tests and then you follow up with a retrospective questionnaire. One thing also, those retrospective questionnaires or any questionnaire or survey is usually collecting demographic data or other types of like attributes about your user population that you might want to collect. And that's really helpful too. I have there at the bottom one is like health literacy scale. So one thing that we care about a lot is health literacy. We know that most of the US has really poor health literacy. We need to, that would help to group our users into different like health literacy like cohorts so that how can we design specific for that different cohort. You could, like when you're collecting quantitative data, that could also include, their age and where their socioeconomic status. So like those things are important when you're designing for, different user groups. So how do you design a mixed method study? So I kind of go back to like, well, what do you want to find out first? Like, like identify your research questions. Like you can't study everything, right? So identify those one or two key research questions, and then you kind of choose your appropriate methods. So you kind of go back to the start. And when you're choosing those appropriate methods, you also have to think about, your time, like time under tension, right? Like how long do you have to be able to do this study? How comfortable are you with the method? So I would encourage you to like experiment with different, methods that you haven't tried before, but also understanding that maybe you're in a position where you need to produce something very quickly. And then once you choose that, you kind of, collect your data. So that could mean, maybe you have to create a new instrument, a data collection instrument, which is basically just a fancy word for saying you just create a new survey, right? And so you create those, you send it out, you collect the data, and you analyze it. And, you can use different tools for analyzing both quantitative and qualitative data. And then you integrate those findings. So, that's where that triangulation comes in. And then you can, interpret and report. So right here, this slide is just like be creative. Like I hate the phrase think outside the box because I feel like it's overused, but like when you have a problem, when you're given a project or, I just encourage you to be creative, like really think outside the box and be like, well, I can't do this, but what can I do, right? Like the glass is half full. So map out the user experience though too. Like there's so many, like so many organizations have a lot of data. Like I don't know in my org, there's like data everywhere. And like, so you have to go to one team to get this data source and you have to go to another team in this data source. And that's fine. Well, I'll do it. I'll go and navigate that. But if you're like searching for quantitative data in particular, like map out the user experience, like the journey that you're like looking at. And then every interaction, every touch point with the app or with the organization that you are studying or the problem, that's probably a data point. it might not be measured, like your company might not be collecting it, but it could be potentially a data point. So like, I go back to website interactions, services or products purchased, like that might be a thing that you want to look at. Calls, like how many times did this user call? Chatbot interactions, what were they interacting with our chatbot? And then what pages did they go after they interacted with the chatbot? And then did they call a customer service after they went to the website? Things like that. Interview the next best thing to your users. I kind of mentioned that, like, your subject matter experts, like in our org, our call center people, they know our users, like they know why they're calling. They have an intimate relationship with our members because they're handling their calls all day long. So we can't reach out to users, but we can interview our subject matter experts, which are our call center employees. And then use tools to analyze and synthesize insights. And you can also, now there's AI, and you can use that as a research partner. I have used MUIQ. That is actually like that's a data analysis like software. It actually has a recruiting platform in it too. So but you have to have a license. But Navivo is a qualitative data analysis software. And Miro, I love. I'm gonna always encourage Miro because like I said, I like workshops and I like putting it all in Miro because you can like literally analyze the data within Miro. And now it's got these cool things where you can like put the sticky notes in like a little in a little like columns and rows, and it'll stick out like it'll export in Excel. I'm like, thank you so much, Miro. And then Copilot too. So like we'll go into some of the limitations of mixed method study, but like if you're a lone researcher and you just want a secondary, insights, or just to like talk to, I guess like an AI tool, right? To say like, am I interpreting this correctly? What am I missing here? And I've done that. I've done my own research. I've done my data analysis. But if I'm a single researcher and I want to just make sure that I am not missing anything, I'll throw that data into Copilot and I'll be like, I'll prompt it correctly, but use it as a research partner. So I just have two examples here because if whatever you're researching, I encourage you to just look through literature and see how other researchers did it. But I was given the task to identify common patient queries to our healthcare organization. So what are people calling about? What are their pain points? And so I did my own literature review because I love to look at that. So that was qualitative data. I asked for the high volume call reasons. So what are our top call reasons in our org? And that told me the frequency of the topics. And then I took the call summaries from our call center support, they have to write out little call summaries. And so I actually took that qualitative feedback and I looked through all of that. And then I used also the qualitative feedback from our surveys that we send out with the consumer verbatim. And so I took all of that data set, I looked at them all separately, and then I kind of synthesized them into like common themes. And then I turned them into like basically user queries. So at the end of that, I came up with 284 in a pretty short amount of time because I leveraged Copilot as well, right? Like, and I said, please turn these, like once I had the data, I asked them to turn them into common user queries. This is another example. I actually just looked over it because like we're doing implementing a lot of AI in our company. And so I wanted to understand patients' preferences for AI and the tasks that they might use it. And so this was a mixed method study. These researchers wanted to understand patients' preferences for using a chat bot within electronic health record. So I'm sure you all maybe been to the doctor and you have your Advent Health System or your Orlando Health or your MyChart on. And there was a chatbot that was integrated into that. And so users would go in there and they use it for certain tasks. So they first did a survey. So this was a sequential study. They first did a survey to say like, what are all the tasks that you're using it for? So they're able to identify those main buckets. And then they followed up with an interview to find the motivations, right? Like why are you using it for more administrative tasks, which is what they found out, than these other more maybe sensitive tasks that they wanted to speak to a doctor. So that was a good study, and I have a citation there. This is a common question, and this was something that I really struggled with when I was doing my dissertation. I was like, how many users do I need, right? To be like rigorous, right? I know if you're any of academics out there, you are trained to defend your methods and why you're using them and why you're collecting why you're using 5 participants and not like 7 or 8. So this is in my book. It just kind of gives a good like kind of like understanding of like if you're using contextual inquiry, like you can use like 10 to 12 would be a rigorous like study. And then for surveys, you can see that if you're wanting to generalize, you might need about 100. So the limitations. So yeah, there are limitations because mixed methods can be very robust and a little bit overwhelming too. Number one, I already mentioned it, limited or no access to users. Like this is not a mixed methods problem though. This is just a general UX problem. Like it's hard to get access to users often. If you're in contract work, a lot of times, like I don't know why companies are like, oh no, we want you to know about our consumers, but we don't want you to have access to them. Like, so I don't understand that. But and then so you have like a large data corpus. So if you are a single researcher, like I said, your resources might be limited. So that's also problematic. And then also just like being able to execute a mixed method study, if you don't have the time to do it, like if all you have time to do is to send out a survey and just provide those insights to your, whoever you're providing those insights to, that might be what is feasible. It requires methodological expertise, and that's where, like I'm not an expert in every single method. I am more of a qualitative researcher. Of course, I feel like more people in UX are more qualitative. So that is one thing, but also I would say that it also gives you the ability to kind of like experiment with different methods, maybe do it in like a low stakes study or low stakes environment. So that is one maybe limitation. And then analyzing and synthesizing insights from your large data corpus, right? That can be a little bit overwhelming, especially if you have 2 or 3 and it's large, right? You got like a lot of insights. So that's another limitation. That's kind of the end of my presentation. I hope maybe I inspired you and taught you something. If you don't have any questions for me, I do have questions for you. Yes.
Hold on. Thank you. Great presentation, by the way, very insightful. And I really like, especially what you mentioned about not having access to the users.
Yeah.
But sometimes having access, especially in the healthcare context, to use subject matter experts. And when you're sort of like interfacing with them, are you running, say, the allow study against the subject matter experts so they can give you feedback in these interfaces? How are you gathering data from these experts, right? Because you mentioned one method in particular working with experts, but I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, we're just interviewing, right? We're maybe coming to them with here's the problem that we might see. Like, what is your feedback? So are you saying like how are we actually doing it? Like it's just yeah, just conversation. Yeah. Like it's basically interviews, just a lot of meetings, right? Like, and so right now with recording software, right, you can record and get the transcript, which is really helpful if you need to go back. I take a lot of notes. I'm still old school. I have like my document on the side that I'm constantly taking notes. So yeah, it's just interviews, like very unstructured. So yeah.
Thank you. You mentioned a lot of like pairing of quantitative and qualitative. I was wondering, would it be, I guess, like academically rigorous or possible to take like qualitative like survey information, um, or just an interview, right, and do like content analysis on it and transform it into quantitative?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is done often. I would not say that it would be a mixed methods though, because it's just one method that you've kind of collected. You're turning that data into quantitative insights. That is done a lot, but yeah, that's totally, and that also, that can give you numbers too, right? Like if you need to satisfy the stakeholder with some numbers, that would also help satisfy.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, thanks for the talk. It's really, really informative. I got a question about user segmentation. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're, if you have like your users, well, like I know like the different user segments in my org because we focus on like healthcare, right? So we got our, 65, we have a lot of patients with a lot of chronic diseases. So they're just kind of like attributes that you might want to pull out. And then if you do have like a secondary researcher that can do like this, multivariable regression analysis and really find out the weight of different, variables, that is one way that I think like pulling out those segments is very helpful. So I mean, I would want to know more about what your users look like, and then we might identify different attributes that would be able to be segmented into different populations. I think it would be different. It's different for every user base, right? Like,
I'm just gonna follow up to say like, yeah, sometimes deciding what the segments are is difficult, right? It's like,
yeah.
I guess there's some, like what you say, above healthcare, especially above 65, below 65, maybe quite clear. Everybody kind of knows, right? But is there something else like gender-based or whatever, or geographic?
Yeah,
You
I mean,
know,
I think
so many ways
demographics
to
is
study.
always one to fall back on, right? Like, because you have different socioeconomic statuses and like, gender is always a thing. And then age, you can always like, it's like marketing, right? Like the different market segments. So
Got two questions. One related to segment. You mentioned like health literacy. That one's tied obviously to the market that you're in. How does that play into the research methods? Like how does health literacy get represented in the research that you provide?
not much because I would love for it to play a bigger role, but I'm only like one person, and so it's important, but one way, like, because health literacy, the only way, actually, this is a research study that I want to do, is I want to find a way of identifying health literacy of our different users without actually being able to talk to users or send them like a survey, because there is a standardized health literacy scale, but it has to be taken by that user. And it kind of asks them like their ability to understand like health information and like how much it affects their ability, their behaviors and things like that. But knowing that, our users, we just have a guideline though that all information needs to be written in 5th grade. But being able to make a case to stakeholders who might want to implement before these things, I don't want to reveal too much, like are taken into consideration, like before, that picture of our users is not really thought of in decisions, especially regarding like AI, because I feel like every organization in the world right now just wants to AI checkbox, like, yeah, we got it. We're awesome. So it's just thoughtful. It's more, like I focus on users, right? So it's just a thoughtful way. And it might be different for whatever your users are. There might be a different standardized scale that you can measure that is important. I know there's also patient activation. So again, I only know healthcare, but like that's where I encourage you to read literature, right? Like there might be something out there. So
Awesome. And then I'll get to you, Nardo, next. Unrelated to that, I know it's a mixed research talk, but Desert Island, you're wearing a lot of hats. You don't have dedicated researchers. We've got designers, we've got engineers, we've got product managers in this meetup. What research method would be your go-to if you had to choose one to go to?
I would choose Think Aloud, I think, because, well, no, I know because that is the gold standard, right? And you only need 5 users to really find out problems. So it's pretty, resource less intense, I would say, because you only need 5 users, right, to really find out 80 to 85% of the usability problems. So, and it is that qualitative feedback. And you can transform it into quantitative data, right? Because like now you have all your usability problems. You're like, oh, this part of the website had this many problems. You can also give it a severity rating too. So there's a lot you can do with a think aloud, a good think aloud. There's a lot you can do.
Excellent. So actually, that was going to be my follow-up question, which was about number of participants
Yeah.
per study. So you mentioned 5 for the allowed, but how about for surveys? Like how many participants should I aim for to get a, meaningful data
Yeah.
set?
Well, if it's quantitative based, approximately 100. If you are really getting into like quantitative, like statistical significance, like like I said, I'm not a quantitative researcher, but then there is like, you can go on Google and find out like how to find out my survey sample. So if you have like 300 in your sample or in your like your user base, and then you want to know how much is going to be statistically significant, then there's a formula that you can find out. Like it might be, I don't know, 30 or something like that. So.
Matt's got a question.
I get announced by name. So I've got to, you had some questions for us as well up there, which is nice. But I have a question for you. You mentioned diary studies, which is one of my favorite. I'm going to categorize it as not the most useful research methods. I love diary studies, but I find the amount of effort and work doesn't really result in the amount of payoff. So I was curious if you found value in diary studies.
I've not actually performed a diary study. I met with one, I think it's maybe Dovetail, or there's a tool out there where I met with them and I learned their tool that allows easier diary studies. And so it's like a mobile app that will maybe prompt users to insert different things. I think they can be valuable because they're probably like the one qualitative method that is more like long-term. And so like if you do have the time and you're really studying something, it is a way to understand users' behaviors long-term. But yeah, in a short amount, like, yeah, like if you're only measuring them for like a week and then you have to like, it's more of it's a method that you have to teach your users to, or your participants, like how to do the study. So there's a little bit of a bias there in there anyway, but yeah.
Yeah. And then the thing that I have for you, and actually kind of to your question too, I've done think aloud usability tests where I throw like system usability scale style questions and they're like Likert questions. So like, we're testing multiple versions of a design and we'll do one and then we'll be like, okay, here's a survey. We're going to step away. You fill this out. We'll be back when you're done. And so it was an interesting way to combine quantitative measures and it's also interesting when you like see somebody like breeze through someone and you're like, it sucked. And you're like, oh, if I hadn't given you that question, I don't know that I would have gotten that insight. So it was a really interesting way to combine those measures.
Yeah, that's done often actually, is think aloud followed by the SUS. That's done a lot. Yeah.
I do that too. Yeah. Also, software. You were talking about software for doing the diary studies, and I have used DScout.
Maybe
and
it's that one. It was
DScout actually, people are being compensated to use the software, and it has them on a regular basis go back and try to do it. You guys can all sign up for DScout and get paid too if they select you.
That you brought that up, because when it comes to your resources though too, I didn't mention rewards and compensation. So that's another thing too. Like if you're using, like there are recruiters out there, you can use a recruiting platform, but like if you're doing a study, you have to think about like, okay, where are the funds that are coming back for them? So.
Hello, I'm a fellow UX researcher, so thank you so much for doing this. You talked a little bit about how sometimes you have to defend your research either when you start or at the end. Do you find you have to defend it more when you use more methods and make the study more complex, or less compared to when you're doing fewer methods?
In the industry, in my practitioner world, no, we don't have to really defend anything that we're doing, kind of, which is kind of good. It was really kind of interesting for me to transition into an industry role. She's laughing because she knows, right? Like where I was doing my dissertation, like, yeah, we defended the reasons why we're using every method, like very well, right? You have to have a citation for like, why am I using this? Why am I using 5 users? Why am I using this method? And then because you're providing value for your methods, which are going to be able to answer your research questions, which is really where you're adding to the body of knowledge. So that defense is important in the academic world. So yeah.
That kind of layers into a question I have, like, okay, how did you choose? How do you often, you said you had a couple favorites
Yeah.
and some that maybe you haven't experimented with yourself, but how do you choose which one you want to use? And is there some kind of
Yeah,
you know.
no, I mean, there's no real trick. I mean, you go back to like, what is your research question? Like, what do I want to find out? And then like in your toolkit of methods, you like, what is going to be the best to collect that data that I need to answer that research question? So if I want to know user motivations for, using the chat, then maybe interviews would be the best. Because I'm going to collect that subjective feedback. But if I just want to know how big of a problem this is and list out a lot of different, like, let users just rank something, well, then a survey, like test a lot of people, then maybe a survey is a better option. Or now, if we're talking mixed methods, you're probably doing both. So.
Yeah. Abhishek.
So I actually just have a follow-up on that. So I've been thinking of first question. So what methods do you rely on the most? And nowadays it's just surveys for you, right? So we can find out the most amount of information from the broadest of people. So you just highlighted, like, if I wanted to find out emotions and reasons, I would do an interview. I mean, you want to get it all, you can also get it out of a survey. So I'm just kind of curious, when did you use an interview like explicitly? I mean, it's a good study on evaluating UI, and it makes sense to test somebody. But I'm just going to make a false argument. Service always better because you get to get more feedback from people. So interview is probably more relevant than surveys.
Well, if you're having a quantitative survey and you're just saying, what is your feeling? Are you going to have a drop-down list? And then that's it. But what if you want to dive in more deep as to like why they're feeling that? Or what you need to change in order to make them not feel bad or angry or upset to happy or delighted or, satisfied. So that's where the interviews come in, because you are there in person. Maybe it's remote, but still you're the researcher too, right? Like you're the expert, and that's what UX researchers excel at, is being able to have those personal skills to make that person feel comfortable enough to open up to you, right? And really provide that valuable feedback that you just don't get from a survey. Like, and if you're trying to get it from a survey, it's probably where you need, if you're having like a survey of all free response, like people are not going to take it unless you have it like required, and then you better pay them a lot because they're not going to sit there and write an essay for you. So, yeah.
Lots of questions tonight. This is awesome.
Thank you. I was wondering how, yes, yeah, I'm Casey. Thank you for speaking. I know I've already asked one, but I forgot that part. I was wondering how transferable these methods are to like employee experience, something I've been kind of reading about, and if there's like maybe a conflict of interest there that makes surveys or interviews less valid or less useful.
I would say they're absolutely transferable. I mean, like your employees are your users as well, right? I would say the only thing is, just from my experience to like check with managers, like if you're going to be sending out a survey, like, is it okay for us to do this? Also, you might want to like, there's probably, you probably can't reward them. Like my company has this really cool thing, which I love. It's called Bravo. And it's basically, you can just go on and Bravo someone and they're aligned to our value statements and the way that we work. But I use that a lot because like, I know that I reach out to subject matter experts all the time via chat and whatnot. So that's just another thing too, is like, is there a way that you can reward them? And then also like, how much time do they have? And so you would just maybe make sure you do those double checks with their managers or whatnot. But if it's a project that you're given, like usually you have that evidence, right? Like say, I have a very a very kind of formatted way of whenever I reach out to someone, especially new that I don't know, I'm kind of like, hey, I'm Jess, like this is what I'm doing. This is who I heard about you from, and this is why I want to talk to you. So it's kind of like a, who am I? Why am I coming to you? And what I want to get from you and why I know that's so valuable. I always throw that in, like I'm really appreciative of your expertise, right?
All right, I have another one. What about focus groups versus, the think aloud with one individual? Have you seen benefits over one or
Do
the
you
other?
mean like a focus group over a mixed method or
You have experiences where like you,
focus group, think aloud, like I've
Okay,
seen
yeah.
that done with multiple people, I don't think. That I would say you probably aren't getting really accurate data because they're probably feeding off of each other, and one person is probably not talking at all. Like you get those social dynamics. That's also the good thing about focus groups, if you can get them all speaking, but not in their interaction with like an object. No?
All right, any more questions? Are there any online? All right.
Cool.
We have another question, all right.
Hi. How do you handle keeping like the information that you get safe for the actual user? Concerns with maybe like as a user, if I was participating, any
Yeah.
like sensitive information.
Yeah, you're coming from an academic background. So, any you have to first of all, you have to get consent. Like in the academic world, you get consent, right? And you'll go through like an IRB if it is, and they'll help guide you as to like what is safe. But usually it's like you either de-identify it if it's gonna be like if you're gonna have it be anonymous, and then you have to have like it saved on like a password secured, device. I know I had to buy like a specialized device for my think aloud data that I had. And then you usually have to destroy it. I know for the academic and I'm speaking from UCF as well, that it's usually had to be destroyed within 5 years after your study. But IBR will help you guide you through that. And then if you're in an org, like usually you're going to have legal counsel that like if you're ever doing a method that you just have questions about, like I would also seek counsel from whoever is in your org that can help you with that.
Do you use telemetry or whatever you call it?
Telemetry, is that like GPS stuff?
No, like you can see where people click and how they are navigating the site
Oh, like
for troubles that they might have.
like heat maps or is that like
Yeah,
interactive?
Yeah, it could be a heat map of like
Yeah,
how-
yeah. Actually, I just looked at a study today. They did a heat map on I didn't do the study, but yeah, we have different contractors and vendors that we also seek to do UX research. So yeah, we do them. So
Why?
yeah, yeah,
It is like that.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Because
no,
the trouble
yeah.
is like the data does not really tell you the why behind it, right? So like you can see, okay, for this site, people always click this wrong button or something, or they keep clicking in and out, in and out, in and out, but you don't know what's going on and why they're
Yeah.
doing it,
Yeah.
but I guess that's to
You can
follow
only-
up with something.
Right. And that's the value of pairing it up with a qualitative. So like there's eye tracking too, which is really cool. I've not done a full-blown study, but I have experimented with it. And that's another one in the case where like you can see where people look at, you can see the object of area of interest, the area of interest, but like you have to pair that up with at least maybe retrospective interviews or think aloud. Sometimes eye tracking is combined with think aloud in one study. That's a lot for your participants, but at least you're able to find out why they're looking at that. And then you have the quantitative data to support that as well.
Sorry to keep asking, but thinking about like the telemetry studies, there was something I recently that was geofencing, etc.
I haven't heard it like geofencing, but we are trying to get like GPS stuff on our users because It is locations, like some of our products are location specific. So the more that we can know about that user, the more we can personalize, right? The more, and also in healthcare, there's a lot of state regulations too. So like if we don't know what that state that user is in, like there's a lot of regulations. Obviously we do once they like log into our websites, they authenticate, but if we knew that before that, and we have consent, right? Like turn on your GPS and you'll get personalized notifications. Then we can personalize information better. And also we know more about our users, right? So.
What? AI. I have one question on AI, and I just want to get your take on it. So one of the questions you have is just like, how do you collect data, or like, what are your methods? In theory, like, there's probably a future where you could feed all your customer data into an AI machine. It'll simulate 1,000 of your users, and then you could interview them to get insights or study them, or something, to get better understanding. All that's right now.
Yeah.
So, is that, are you seeing that, or
No,
are you seeing that, or what do you think about it?
I think that's actually really cool because that's what I'm really interested in, the whole digital twin. And I've not seen it applied to digital twins as a like a consumer, like it is in healthcare, like right, we're simulating bodies and you know, genetics and things like that. I haven't seen it applied actually creating a digital consumer, let's just say, and following their, you know, digital footprint either before or after, because number one, I don't know. I'm sure there's ways. There's like log file analysis, like that is a way of understanding users' path into maybe your portal or whatever. And then it would be cool to follow their path elsewhere and like where are they going on social media? Like what are they looking up? Like that to me, I think is really cool. And like, yeah, if we can simulate that in like a digital twin, I wouldn't, you know, I'm always going to argue, go to the user. Like, I'm not going to use that digital twin to then interview and be like, oh, we don't need users anymore. But it is interesting on what you can do with that data set. And it might, and also it might solve the problem or help with the problem of not having access to users, right? So is that where you're getting? Because that's actually a great idea. You need to blow that out of the ocean.
Back to the topic of focus groups, one of the folks online said their last focus group turned into a political debate, and then someone else kind of defended focus groups. They can be really useful. How do you keep a focus group from going south or going in the wrong direction?
That's a good question. So that is where your social skills as a UX researcher come in handy. I'm not always going to say like I would be successful. Luckily, like that's never happened to me. But I would say, you know, make sure you have some housekeeping, you know, criteria before you maybe start, and maybe having like a parking lot, like it is important to collect everyone's ideas and make sure everyone feels heard and say like, okay, we might parking lot this topic right now or move on to the next question. Like sometimes you kind of have to give and take, like even if it's data that you wanted to understand, I would say move on, like if it's going to get heated.
I think that's it for the questions. Anyone else? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next phase here. Hey, how about a big round of applause for Jess? That was amazing. Thank you. Jess and I have been talking about her coming out here and participating in one of our meetups, and we really appreciate you doing that. We appreciate you so much. We have anyone here that wants to speak gets something like this. So why don't you open that up? We'll show it to everybody. And as you see, there are all kinds of topics. Everyone here has different skill sets. And so that is an exclusive that you only get if you speak at DUX. So for everybody here to be able to get one of those. Yes, that's right. Official speaker. I think you spoke more than here. So yeah. Yeah, sure.